In kalari, and other closely related South Indian martial arts, the teacher is the source of knowledge. Even though there are options to learn available earlier through books and recently through the internet, the practitioners insist that this art form, learnt without the guidance of the guru, will be incomplete. The students learn in groups under the direct instruction of the guru or from a disciple as appointed by the guru in his absence. Sometimes the guru might choose to give individual lessons to the student, especially if the student is working as an apprentice under that guru instead of just attending weekly or daily lessons. The kalari gymnasium is hierarchical, with the gods and ancestors of the art on the top, followed by the guru, then disciples based on their seniority. The seniority is based on the amount of time the student has spent with that guru. The greater the seniority, the greater the chance of the teacher opening up to that student, because he would have developed trust not only by closely observing the student, but also by testing the student for their moral values. The flip side of opening up is the secrecy that is inherent in the student-teacher or Guru-Sishya relationship of these martial arts traditions, especially in Tamil Nadu. This talks relates to how such a relationship leads to other possibilities and its functions. These issues are tied with nationalism, caste, socio-economic status and gender, but due to the given time constraints, I will not be trying to disentangle them, but describing only the results towards an understanding of how social settings influence modes of transmission of knowledge. For this purpose, I'll be using the frameworks of apprenticeship developed by Downey. This research is based on my one-year apprenticeship from the year 2017 to 2018 and my prolonged interactions with the practitioners since 2012 in India and in Europe. While the first half provides an overview of the socio-cultural context in Tamil Nadu, in the later half I have followed Abul Gold's notion of writing against culture, wherein I closely focused on particular individuals and their changing relationships. I have used an active, self-reflective voice to emphasize that my analysis doesn't represent an objective reality, but represents one of the many subjective realities experienced by the postmodern self. The writing style follows an alternating thick description or a systematic introspection weaved together with an analysis of the elements in that description. In doing so, I have followed Rambo Runoy's evocative layered account, that is, handing readers layers of experience so that they may fill in the spaces and construct an interpretation of the writer's narrative. As mentioned in my earlier submission, I am simply giving an arena to the voices of my interlocutors through collaborative public anthropology. Hence, I have tried to be epistemologically disobedient and to move away from the conventional academic writing which has been shaped by colonial epistemologies. The Tamil martial arts were once used only for street performances. This is an activity confined to the lower caste and those of lower social status. Thus, the martial arts were also relegated to that section of the society. Most probably due to the Tamil revival movements in the late 1960s and popular media, for instance, movies by actors like MGR, Kamal Hassan and Surya, the martial arts took on or conferred status as they became a part of the imaginary Tamil culture that transcended social class. The cool monsoon gust brushed my face through the bus window and tussled with my hair. I was on a window seat with cracked cushion cover, eager to meet my guru for the next lesson. Just so that I can learn martial arts from him, I had moved in with my relatives so that I'll be an hour away from him. When I met him for the first time, he told me that I had learned the basic steps the wrong way and that I should relearn from him. Since I know that it's normally expected of me to start from scratch, while going to a different teacher, I didn't say a word to refute him. The bus slowly came to a halt. I got down and walked to the class, passing through the narrow streets of Madathukulam, only to find out the kalari was locked. His family that lived near the kalari informed me that he had left for a treatment session and asked me to call him on the phone. On picking up the phone, the Guru apologized that he had completely forgotten the class and asked me to come the next day. I did not talk back. Instead, I revised my previous lessons for some time in the kalari and left to catch the return bus. This incident happened around the third week of July 2017 when I had just started my lessons. My Guru, Veeramani Asan, in November 2017 revealed that he had been testing me on many occasions, and this could have very well been one such test, just as asking me to repeat the basics, even though we both knew that I knew them very well. By that time, I had already started assisting my Guru with massages and conducting lessons. He had also started revealing some of the intricacies of the martial art which are normally reserved for the senior students. For instance, normally the instruction would be to just punch. But ever since he accepted me as his disciple through an initiation ritual, he would guide me where to punch and which mudra I should hold in my fist. He had also taken me to meet some of his teachers. Thus, within a few months, I have become a trusted student for him who could carry on his legacy. There are several reasons why he placed his belief in me just after a brief period of interaction. The first reason is that I have the financial opportunities to carry the martial arts forward, and also since I am a researcher, I could be able to document his legacy. There is a sense of bequeathing knowledge to the right person so that it can be carried forward to the future. There are also some assumed expectations and obligations from both the teacher and the student or the researcher. The latter two expect the teacher to share his knowledge for their purpose, let it be research or just learning the martial art for its own sake. The teacher also expects that his legacy is popularized or at least carried forward. Such popularization has other benefits for the teacher. When the practice is popularized either through literature or through even self-funded documentary films, it creates social capital which adds to the authenticity of that practice. The practitioners produce authenticity for their embodied knowledge by flying under the flag of a renowned teacher like CVN Gurukul from Kerala, and also by forming organizations in a segmentarily opposing way. That is, on the local level, the kalaris might contest amongst each other for opportunities, but on the national level, they might form a united front and compete with the other states. Even in such organizations, there are troubles as to who is practicing martial arts the right way. This doesn't mean to say that two schools practicing the same martial arts tradition have no resemblance in the body techniques, but that they have their own idiosyncrasies, as in languages. One distinguishes between lang and parole. There is a common understanding of the bodily knowledge, but there are many ways of expressing that knowledge. These varied expressions lead to internal arguments within the organization of kalaris that one's practice is more authentic than the other. Since there is no single framework of reference for these martial arts, there is no possibility of verifying which is the right way of practicing, which creates contestations of authenticity within the schools. Even in my research, I have noticed that two gurus who learnt under the same teacher taught their students in a different way, not only because of their own understanding of the movements, but also because that the teacher introduced some changes over his lifetimes and the gurus learned from him at different times. Yet, they both cite the same teacher as their source of knowledge. The second reason for trusting me is that, as the Asan put it, I am not from the same locality, and so there would be no chance of me taking away his clients or students. The Asan was weary because this has happened a few times in the past. One common characteristic that I noticed from my participants in Tamil Nadu is that they are from socially and economically underprivileged backgrounds. Most of them, at some point of their lives, had a completely unrelated day job before becoming a full-time martial arts teacher. Even at present, the medical and massage practices associated with the martial arts are the primary source of income for many of these masters. The final reason for this trust is that I was introduced to him through another martial arts teacher who was a close friend of his. As mentioned earlier, the South Indian martial artists work in networks which are formed on the basis of common styles or under the name of a popular guru to generate authenticity by collective identity. Moreover, the bodily knowledge carries social capital which the gurus hesitate to share with each other, and hence some gurus take offense or even forbid students to learn under multiple gurus. However, if a student gets introduced to a guru through another guru, then there is an assumption that the student is trustworthy. By aligning oneself with a guru or many gurus and deriving authenticity from his pre-established status as a renowned practitioner, the new generation of teachers create a new kind of kinship which I call as martial lineage. Many times, familiar lineage intertwines with martial lineage, and ideally, the sons of the guru take over his practice. But in reality, this is not the case in many kalaris where students outside the family maintain martial lineage, which creates tension between the two lineages. These lineages relate to caste and other mythologies. In the case of northern kalari poet, Lord Parashurama, an important Hindu god in Kerala, is believed to have taught the art form to some 18 Brahmin families, and they spread it to the rest of the region. In southern Kalaripayat, Varmadi and Silambam, the lineage aims to trace back to Lord Shiva and the Siddhars, the quasi-historical figures in the Tamil tradition, who taught their knowledge to the Nadar caste. Some teachers have expressed their frustration in trying to find the original source, while others unquestioningly subscribe to one of such beliefs based on the caste, region, and religion. Such practitioners insist that their practice is the most authentic one and that other practices were derived from that one form. A very few try to take a more pragmatic approach and construct a theory or understanding combining functionalism, naturalism, and evolutionalism. Mankind developed these art forms by imitating nature, and it was passed on over the generations as people had to defend themselves from animals and enemy clans. Over thousands or hundreds of years, one form became many, developing stylistic differences associated with regions and communities based on their language and other political and military reasons. From my experience of practicing these forms with some level of expertise, I understand the temptation to follow the latter narrative as it avoids mythological reasoning and the problems inherent in choosing any one style as primary. However, without actual research, even such a narrative is neither complete nor innocent. Perhaps a historian and a linguist would be able to tell more by looking at the language of instruction used in these martial arts and provide more insight into this. Despite a plethora of narratives, there are two constant factors which I have observed. Firstly, almost no practitioner tries to consciously alter the movements that they have learned, nor do they acknowledge that there were any alternatives that would have happened over many centuries. Many believe that the martial lineage was an unbroken chain of knowledge which they inherited from the Siddhars or other yogis, and that the others were corruptions or cheap imitations of the original form that they have learned. Even if some similarities exist in the verbal instructions of kalari, two kalaris on the same street might emphasize on different details in the movement and argue that their understanding is the most authentic one. Again, the lack of one standardized practice makes each of these claims unverifiable. Hence, the practitioners tie themselves to a lineage of gurus through whom they produce their authenticity. There are cases where the student is expelled from the network and he tries to find other ways of generating this authenticity. However, such a discussion is beyond the scope of this talk. The second constant element is that there are discourses surrounding the martial arts that tie casteism, authenticity, nationalism, and political power, which in turn lead to land rights and nativity. One version of such a discourse that I encountered goes like this. The Nadars are the original Dravidians, the true descendants of the ancient Tamil kingdom that covered the whole South Indian peninsula. The assumption is that the Guru's lineage traces back to its original founding community, and their Nadar caste is a living attestation to this claim. The original Dravidians were conquered by the Aryans or present-day Brahmins, who took away their lands and rights and enslaved them, systematically oppressed them, and placed them in the lower ranks of the caste hierarchy. Such a claim is hard to dismantle as it is interlinked with valid historical truths, the continuing systematic oppression of lower caste by higher castes, and a more recent prevalent political propaganda starting from the self-respect movement that vilifies the high caste Brahmins. Such discourses often take different forms in different parts of Tamil Nadu, but there is a common theme of invasion and oppression, eventually leading to nationalism and affirmation of regional identity. However, almost all martial arts teachers insist that there is no caste-based discrimination within the martial arts, while in the inner circle there is a designation of Brahmins. In Kalaripayat circles, this appears in the often repeated designation as the mother of all martial arts. Even though there is no scientific evidence so far, such claims contribute to both nationalistic pride and regional Malayali identity. Thus, martial arts become tools of nostalgia, leading to both unification when they are viewed as relics of a shared glorious past, uniting people under a complex collective identity, and at the same time being inherently divisive as a category of other arises, vilifying a particular population. Despite this being the blueprint for Guru-Sishya relationship, the student-teacher relationship, it varies to a great extent depending on the social positioning and the place and purpose of practice. In some cases, the Guru might take a liking for the student, and the student might gain some say in what he wants to learn. Depending on the place of practice, especially in rural settings, the student and the teacher might have closely knit social or even familial ties where they get to interact more often. This would enable the teacher to be more open towards those students, while also the student has to behave properly and maintain a good name in those social settings through adhering to certain social values that the student might not even believe in. The gift of knowledge imparted by a guru always comes with a sense of responsibility or ethical obligation toward the guru, his school, and his Penkak Silat. Kiel Barth notices in his fieldwork on Silat in Indonesia. The stress on his denotes the expressive style of the particular guru. The gift of knowledge always comes with expectations of reciprocal consideration. The moment I was accepted as a student, I became an active player in the hierarchical relationships that constituted student-teacher affiliations and structures of legitimacy. This comes with a few expectations from them. Firstly, I should trace my martial ancestry by recollecting the names of the teachers whenever I am passing on the knowledge to someone. And secondly, I should make sure that the knowledge doesn't end with me but is passed on to the next generation. The latter includes a condition, so not broadcast, meaning that the seeds of knowledge must be planted safely in the fertile minds that are ready to receive the knowledge and are not meant to be broadcasted everywhere. The first expectation, and sometimes along with the others, appear in apprenticeship-based ethnographies, thereby influencing the flow of knowledge and eventually the ethnographies themselves.